It's apple cake today. I picked up a little box and it had a ridiculous amount of apples in it, and my girls, they used to eat apples a lot when they were younger, but don't so much enjoy them unless I practically have to force them to eat them. So we are going to make an apple cake today to use up some of these, and they'll definitely eat that because, well, cake is cake. So we are going to start by adding 250 grams of self-raising flour. So I've got my bowl here and I'm going to zero my scales. We'll get a sieve here and we will sift all the ingredients together. Make sure to zero your scales when you've got all your things on top. So 250 grams of self-raising flour. Remembering to turn your oven on at 180. Almost forgot there. So just half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda. I'm nearly finished mine, so it's always tricky when you're trying to get the last bit out. 2 teaspoons of nutmeg. And half a teaspoon of ground cloves. We've been working in the garden the whole weekend. I am exhausted, so I'm very much so looking forward to a wee bit of cake. And just a wee pinch of salt. And then we're going to sift all these together. So into your dry ingredients, you're going to put 125 grams of butter. And we're just going to rub these between our fingers into breadcrumbs. So we're just going to grab this between our fingertips and just keep rubbing it in through the flour till the butter is all separated and it feels like breadcrumbs. I really do love a wee bit of apple cake. I actually love all fruit cakes. We make banana bread in this house quite often, and we sometimes have it with butter, but discovered that it is absolutely fantastic with a wee serving of Biscoff spread. So nice. Try to make sure that you get all the flour that's at the bottom, and rub that through. So as you can see, that's like wee breadcrumbs. Once we've made our wee breadcrumbs, to our mix we're going to add 125 grams of soft brown sugar. And then we're just going to stir that round and through till the sugar and the flour mixes. Looks like it's pretty even. Don't want any clumps of sugar. Well, you might, but we won't. Now it calls for 350 grams of apples. This is the apples. They're quite nice apples, but some of them are quite bruised, and you know what happens with kids. They always leave the ones that are a wee bit bruised. So we're going to take our corer and take out the core. Can you see? Pop that out, and then we're going to skin that. So we'll take all the skin off. So I've skinned my whole apple, and we are just going to slice that and then cut them into 1 centimetre cubes, or thereabouts. And I I'm going to weigh them as I go. There you go. So one apple was the equivalent to 100 grams. So I'll maybe take 3 or 4 apples, depending on your size of apples. I used to think that my mum was awesome when I was wee, and she used to could peel potatoes in one hand with it, and you know, peel the whole potato with just one skin, one continuous skin, and then cut it all in her hand. It's funny the things that you think are amazing when you're a kid. Some days I'm a right tea Jenny. Today's one of the days. So here's a fun fact, which I read recently. Although I did know about it, I have known about it for a while. But more in kids. So I said before in one of my videos that my body does not absorb vitamins, well, doesn't absorb the vitamins that I give it efficiently. And so I obviously have done research on this. And tea, the tannins in tea, now I thought it was just black tea, but in actual fact green tea has tannins in it as well. The tannins inhibit your stomach from absorbing some vitamins. And I was like, that is so typical. So I read, if like me, you cannot see yourself ever giving up tea. I don't know if it's because I have drank it my whole entire life. As long as I can remember, I've been drinking tea. But if you, before meal times, do not have tea at least 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after you have eaten. And that should encourage your body to absorb the vitamins that you actually are taking on. 327, so I suppose I can put half an apple in and just eat the rest. I mean, I'm sure it does not matter hugely if you add a few grams of apples over or under. So that's 385 grams for 4.5 apples. So we're just going to give the apples in our flour mix a good turning around so that the mix covers all the apples evenly and it gets a good distribution through the mix. Then we are going to add to this 50 ml of milk. This is non-dairy milk. We'll just float that right. And 1 egg. And then we are going to mix that. Now I want you to mix it for a good minute. That's it. Didn't take much liquid, I have to say, for the mix to turn into a good doughy mix. I didn't think that that was going to be a lot of liquid for what was in the bowl. Make sure that you get everything that's at the bottom of the bowl. Make sure it's all mixed in. And that is a fantastic wee batter. baking paper, baking parchment, whichever you want to call it. We are going to, this is roughly 20 centimetres, this square dish. I use this dish for everything. If, like me, and you have a small kitchen, don't think that you need separate trays, separate dishes for every single thing that you do. I use the same pots and pans for sweet and savoury and meat. Just learn to wash your dishes properly, is my belief. So, here we are. I like to have my baking parchment hanging out like this because when the cake is ready, I can just use these as like a little lifting device, and it's quite helpful. So that's ready for the batter to go in. So we will just use a wee spatula to get all the mix out. And I always make sure to get every last drop, because what's the point in baking cake if you're not going to have it, you know? So you just want to press it all into the corners, making sure that your apples are nice and even, that there's no big clumps of batter and no big gatherings of apples. That is nice and even. So we could put it in the oven like that, or we could give this a light sprinkling of caster sugar, and that'll make it nice and crispy on top. So just a nice light. There we go. And that's ready to go into the oven. We will put it into the middle of the oven for 45 minutes. That's our timer going off. Cake should be ready. Watch the heat out your oven. Oh, that looks nice. So you want to leave this in your dish for 20 minutes. The big reveal. So I like to just run a knife around the edges to make sure that it's going to come out without any glitches. Ta-da! I mean, it's so helpful using baking parchment just to lift your cake, because sometimes it can be tricky to get it out. Still quite warm. So I am going to cut this into quarters and then quarters. Cut it whichever way you feel. I don't suppose it'll make much difference, as long as we get to eat it. So you can see some nice apple chunks in there. Looks good. Tea. Cake. Tea. Quite nice. It's risen a bit much for my mouth. You have to kind of inhale whilst you're eating so that it doesn't crumbly bumbly.